And I said, hey, your previous messages haven't come through. What do you want to tell me? And he said, what I'm going to send you, now these are literally his words, what I'm going to send you is going to change the course of humanity.
What would you do if you knew, like in the movies, where the person knows the future, what's going to happen, but they don't want to come off as crazy? What do you do? What is your play to get people aware of that information? I just want you to think about that perspective, because that's what we're dealing with respect to this technology that's out there.
Well, some breaking news also coming out of the US tonight. One person has died and 7 others were injured when a Tesla Cybertruck caught fire and exploded outside US President-elect Donald Trump's Las Vegas hotel.
My name is Kevin McMahill. I'm the sheriff of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. At 8:40 a.m. Las Vegas time, we received the report of an explosion and a fire at the Trump Towers, the iconic hotel that you see behind me. We were told that a 2024 Cybertruck pulled up to the front of the hotel, and in fact I can tell you it pulled right up to the glass entrance doors of the hotel. We saw that smoke start showing from the vehicle, and then a large explosion from the truck occurs. There is one deceased individual in the Cybertruck. So through extensive surveillance video, we were able to track him leaving there, and we know that he went to several different places along Las Vegas Boulevard, and he spent some time in a parking lot of a business near Flamingo and Las Vegas Boulevard. A truck pulling back onto Las Vegas Boulevard from the Sands. See that there? That's north on the boulevard from Sands at 8:39, where he then immediately heads to the Trump Hotel.
Investigators in Las Vegas, Nevada are working to determine how a rented Tesla Cybertruck exploded outside the Trump International Hotel Wednesday morning.
Smoke was coming from inside of the truck after we noticed the flash and the explosion, and I'm going to show you that first video. That's the Cybertruck parked right in front of the doors.
At a joint news conference Wednesday afternoon, the sheriff of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department said the charred Cybertruck was filled with gasoline canisters, camp fuel canisters, and large firework mortars. It was rented through Turo, the same app used to rent the truck in the New Year's Day terror attack in New Orleans. Investigators know the truck was rented in Colorado. They were able to track that truck through the Tesla charging stations and say it arrived in Las Vegas at about 7:30 a.m. and went up and down Las Vegas Boulevard before immediately pulling into the Trump Hotel. It exploded 15 seconds later. Firefighters arrived within 4 minutes.
Did extinguish the fire with assistance from the sprinkler systems and along with that electric vehicle blanket that we use.
The driver of the Cybertruck was killed in the explosion. 7 people suffered minor injuries. The FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force is conducting the investigation.
As of right now, our number one goal is to ensure that we have the proper identification of the subject involved in this incident. Following that, our second objective is to determine whether this was an act of terrorism or not.
A highly decorated Army soldier blew up a Tesla Cybertruck outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. A law enforcement source says the driver was Matthew Livelsberger, a Green Beret who was on leave from his base in Germany.
Well, Jim, this is very shocking to the people who knew him, who've spoken to CNN. Someone who used to work with him said that he had advanced steadily in rank in the military to team sergeant and then second in command to the captain of the Special Forces Detachment, and mentioned that his background background in special forces and explosives seemed at odds with what happened here behind us at the Trump Hotel on New Year's Day morning, where the materials found in that Tesla Cybertruck were fireworks and other things that could have been purchased in retail stores. The investigators yesterday at a press conference talked about the relative lack of sophistication of those materials compared to the extensive background this person had in the military.
This morning, we're hearing from the ex-girlfriend of the Green Beret identified as the driver. Mola Lenghi joins us with that story. Good morning, Mola.
Well, good morning, Rebecca. Yeah, as authorities investigate that Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas this morning, we're hearing from someone who was in contact with Matthew Livelsberger through his final days.
I failed him. We all failed him.
The ex-girlfriend of Matthew Livelsberger, the man who carried out the Las Vegas blast in front of the Trump Hotel, opening up about their final messages. Alicia Arrett hadn't heard from her ex-boyfriend, Livelsberger, a decorated U.S. Army Special Forces soldier, in over 2 years, when she says he started texting her on December 27th out of the blue, asking how she was.
He was just checking up on me.
What began as casual messages quickly became the last words she would ever exchange with him. The Master Sergeant served in the U.S. Army for almost 20 years. He was even featured on the History Channel series Ultimate Soldier Challenge in 2013.
We're going to go full out just like we've done the entire challenge.
In 2018, when Arrett and Livelsberger were dating, he started to open up about the struggles he was facing, at one point texting, "I have been spiraling down the last week or so. Sometimes I get so hopeless and depressed, by far the worst of my life."
He was really open about the trauma he faced and the teammates he lost.
On December 29th, Livelsberger sent pictures of the Cybertruck he rented.
He sent some front views and he shared he felt like he was Batman or Halo.
It wasn't until 2 days later, when the FBI contacted Arrett, that she found out what happened in Las Vegas.
They started to show me a video of him in the Cybertruck. My whole heart broke for him. That he was so broken that he got to that place.
Arrett is still struggling with why Livelsberger would take his own life.
He didn't say anything explicit that would have triggered it, I guess.
was actually a very interesting piece of journalism. And I'll tell you why I found this to be an interesting piece of journalism. You guys might recall that I had on Ashton Forbes, what happened to MH370, that plane that disappeared. And one of the things that he spoke about, and I was not educated about this whatsoever, was he was essentially saying that the government was hiding technology. The exact same thing that is in this email that he alleges was sent to him from Matt Livelsberger. And essentially what Ashton Forbes was saying is that there is there is 0-point gravity that exists, that they are able to manipulate gravity. And specifically, Ashton Forbes was saying that it was this war between China and the United States, that that our government has had this technology and has been hiding it from the public for a very long time. And so now you have an entirely unrelated situation that has nothing to do with MH370, nothing to do with Ashton Forbes, and this person is emailing to allege the same thing. I think that we should look further into that. I don't think this should just be routinely dismissed. I don't think there would be any reason for Sean Ryan to engage in fraud on the public. He's at the top of his game, the top of his podcasting game, and from every angle that he and his producers looked into this email appeared to be legit. And so I'm not going to trust a bunch of people in the intelligence community essentially coming out and saying this email is not legit or this isn't real. I would rather trust internet sleuths who are very good at determining what is and is not real and understands that our government has been invested in hiding these sorts of things for a very long time by calling everybody crazy. And I would also like to trust decorated vets who put their lives on the line for this country above trusting the people that would let them die in a war tomorrow.
That's just Candace Owens listening to what I had to say and other stuff that she's read and realizing there really is something to this. And what she says in there as well, when she's giving her speech there, is that she says, this whole thing about this gravity manipulation and this guy having secret access, that shouldn't just be routinely dismissed as like, oh, he's crazy. That's what the government's doing to hide this stuff for decades, is they've just been saying, oh, that person's crazy.
It's money and power. So let's say you have something that would fit on a little table this big, and it's a generator, and it's pulling energy out of what's called the quantum vacuum, or zero-point energy field, which was proven to exist back in the 50s. Now, physicists have described this energy field. If you had a coffee mug, the amount of space in that coffee mug has enough potential power to boil off all the oceans of the world, quote unquote. It's what Tesla called, not the fake car company, actually Nikola Tesla. I call it fake Tesla cars because if they're plugged into the grid, they're not real Teslas. We'll get into this. But that energy field is everywhere, and you can tap into it. And when you tap into it, you're tapping into this energy field that can be converted to electricity or thrust.
So is the energy field, is it everything in between objects? Is that?
It's not just between, it's within. So if you let's take the chair you're sitting in, or I'm in. It's occupying a volume of space. Mm-hmm. When you get past the molecular to the atomic level of this, and then subatomic, the quarks, you get this into this pluripotent, it's like the foam at the surface of the deep ocean.
Okay.
That all of matter is fluxing in and out of. The early Lockheed Skunk Works man-made UFOs were called flux liners.
Flux liners.
Yep. Where they were pulling energy from this quantum vacuum flux field. Very advanced physics. I mean, we understand it very well. I don't want to put your audience to sleep going into the arcana of the physics of it, but the point I'm making is that was mastered decades ago.
This technology has been around for decades.
Well, about 100 years that there has been empirical evidence of this energy field. Nikola Tesla called it the infinite energy field. There were others who discovered it all the way back to the late 1800s. Now, they didn't have the physics down of what was happening, but in terms of just observing the phenomenon empirically, here you set up a high voltage system, suddenly more energy is coming out than you're putting in. Those are called over unity systems, or free energy, because once you get it tapped, it's just flowing, right? And so that means that every home, business, car, manufacturing, village in Africa would be able to have a device that would not be very expensive, frankly, to mass manufacture, that would generate all the energy they need for all the needs that we have for a modern civilization. And this would be wonderful. There's no pollution, there's no radiation. And once you have the system, there's no cost. There's no refueling. The bad news is that if you're an oligarch, a global oligarch, controlling the macroeconomic system, big oil, big global systems, and let me translate for those of you who've been in the Middle East, our vital national security interest translates to one word, O-I-L, oil, energy. So the problem is, if that technology were to be disclosed, it's a quadrillion dollars. It's $1,000 trillion or more in proven assets, oil, gas, coal, public utilities that are obsolete. It's like it's like a royal typewriter or a horse and buggy. That's what they're protecting.
So the entire energy field, everything that has anything to do with energy becomes completely obsolete at this point.
Yeah, and all transportation systems, internal combustion engines, jet engines, rockets, surface roads. So now, surface roads, I say that only because when you take that same physics and do a torsion, a counter-rotating field, you can get what's called an electrogravitic effect, or anti-gravity, pop culture term. It's a terrible term. It's not anti-gravity. But you can create this electromagnetic field where an object becomes essentially weightless and can move. This is why if you look at the radar tracings of these things, these objects can be moving at 200,000 miles an hour, make a right-hand turn. And there are occupants on these. Now, any pilot knows if you had the G-forces of that, your brains would come out of your nose. Mm-hmm. There's no way it'd be fatal. But because it's correcting for 1G, and there's a sort of a bubble, an envelope in space-time that this object is moving in, there's no limit to what it can do.
So they don't feel the G.
They don't feel it and go straight up, at like one of the radar things we have from Belgium, I got from the Belgian Air Force, was an object that was at, slightly above AGL, a few feet above ground level. And it went from there to boom, like 100,000 feet in one radar swoop, boom. We have a lot of cases like that we've collected. And, you know, the question at this point is, how is that happening? Well, we know how that's happening. And so here's the issue with disclosing all this. When you get past the superficial level, here's a machine, here's a device, here's this, the scientists like myself are going to say, well, how is it doing that? And if they have a thinking brain, which of course is the big assumption now with our educational system collapsing, sorry to say, but my God, I mean, the kids that are now trying to get educated in the system now, God help us all. So, but the fact is that's going to be asked. Now, what's interesting is that the Pentagon has officially said those objects that have been released of the Tic Tac and other UFOs that have been documented with sensors on ships, on board aircraft, and in space. Well, they're not disclosing those sensors, but I know what they are. Those are physical objects moving without any known means of propulsion. Go look at what's been said by the Pentagon. Now, what the person who said that, the Pentagon, says we don't know how they're moving because that spokesman hasn't been read in to these deep black projects that are in this parallel universe of this secret government. It's been my job to collect the actionable intelligence, the documents, and the people who know this and put it together and put it in the briefings for people. So I've provided this to every Minister of Defense and Secretary of Defense for the 4 of the 5 Eyes, which are, of course, you know, U.S., Canada, Australia, UK. I have not done it for New Zealand. But, in every single case, when I've met with these guys, either they're former or current MOD heads or what have you, they've said, we were never read into this. So this data point, let me extend the data point globally. So some years ago, there was this really amazing guy named Lord Hill Norton. He was a 5-star admiral. They used to call him a Sea Lord. Don't you love, I love the British, they're fantastic. A Sea Lord. And he had been head of the MOD, which means in the UK, you're head of MI5, MI6, like our CIA and stuff. But he was also head of the military committee for NATO. And I met with him at his house in Wiltshire, in Hampshire, in England, some years ago. And he asked me to come because he wanted me to bring the briefing document that I had put together for the president. I think at that time it was the late Clinton years. And I said, all right, I'll come over. And I went over with my 4 daughters and wife, and they went off to see the Salisbury Cathedral. And I went and met with this former MOD head. And he was livid. He says, this never came across my desk. I was never read into this. And I said, and yet I have files from your own MOD about the landing of one of these objects at the Bentwaters, Rendlesham Forest, Bentwaters Air Force Base.
No kidding.
Yep, I have the documents, I have the trace landing, I have the U.S. military Air Force people's testimony that were there. So at this point, I have about 1,100 of these folks.
What's a trace landing?
When one of these, in this case, it was an extraterrestrial vehicle, not one of the man-made ones. So we call them ETVs for the ones that are of extraterrestrial origin. The ones that are man-made are often called ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, meaning that they're simulating, not totally, but simulating the energy propulsion capabilities of what we've reverse engineered and studied since the 40s.
Okay.
We'll get into this in a moment. What's the technology transfer arc from the 40s to now? And that's very interesting. It's going to be in our new film called The Lost Century, and How to Reclaim It is the subcaption title. But the Minister of Defense was furious, and you know, he was a bit bombastic and kind of, you know, with the piercing blue eyes, a real character, but he was, I think he was hurt. I mean, if you have that level of responsibility and you find out you were zoomed on probably the most important military and intelligence issue in the 20th century, in 21st century. He said, well, why wouldn't they have told me? So it becomes personal for these men. And I said, well, let me ask your question with a question. And he says, "Oh, what do you mean?" He thought I was being an impertinent Yank, which I can be, but no, I was doing it as sort of a way of sort of illustrating this point. And I said, well, what would you have done if you had found out that there was an organization and a project, global, that had engaged in assassinations, wet works of innocent people, killings, so CIA term, wet works, for, you know, if you're on the watch group list, which I have been on, and that is engaging in all manner of criminal activities, up to including drug running. It has embezzled trillions of dollars from Western economies, and they have the technologies that would save the Earth's biosphere in a generation in poverty. But they are now an existential threat to the world and to the United States and your country, United Kingdom.
After having seen those videos and having some concept of what we're talking about, how significant a discovery we're talking about here, which is this right here. After seeing this and going, wow, okay, this is actually possible, and researching this, I wonder, okay, what are all these people that are looking into this? Like, how close are they to finding the answers? And you look around the UFO community, and mostly nobody's close at all. Even Sean Ryan didn't know what USAP meant. Unacknowledged Special Access Program. He's saying he's worked on black projects and black operations.
So before we jump in, I just want to say a couple things about today. And we're not necessarily validating what came in on that email. There's some pretty alarming stuff that came out in the email about the drones that we're seeing on the East Coast, and some capabilities that China has, some capabilities that we have, some activity that went on in Afghanistan in 2019, which actually we do have news reports that is valid. A lot of this stuff actually really lines up, but we can't give it 100% credibility. Right. I think you would agree with that as an intelligence analyst.
100%.
Spencer Evans, Special Agent in charge of the FBI's Las Vegas division. In terms of a question about the validity of what Leivelsberger put out to the public, either in the two-page manifesto or additional documentation we're discovering, we're not speaking to the content. I can say, as Sheriff Corrin described and others, it runs the gamut. I mean, he's talking about feeling that he was, surveilled, guilt. You can tell there's, some anguish there, some frustration with the government. I mean, there's a whole host of things. So we haven't gotten into, what's legitimate, what's not. The only thing that, out of an abundance of caution, in as much as there's Department of Defense equities that speak to sources and methods or something else that would endanger folks overseas, that's not being released. But beyond that, we haven't vetted any of his writings to determine, what's legitimate and what was in his own head. Yeah, including, he alleges a variety of things, and we haven't gotten into the weeds on any of that.
That podcast email is him.
Yeah, so we have confirmed that the document that he sent to the podcast, we know that he was the one that sent that document. That's correct.
I want to give a little background on you. Retired from the Army in 2023 as a CW2 intelligence officer and understand the information war. In 2020, you were still on active duty. You started a social media account where you intended to share memes and GIFs. Despite your intentions, the account grew into what it is today. You've developed, what is the account's name?
It's an Instagram account, goes by Terminal CWO.
Terminal CWO. You've developed a robust network of service members across the Department of Defense who trust you with their reports of unethical and, in some cases, illegal behavior from their leaders. You expose the unethical and illegal behavior while protecting whistleblowers in order to hold military leaders accountable, which is why you received the email from the Green Beret. And because of your background, you come across wild information all the time. You're here today because of an email you received from Matthew Leivelsberger a couple of days before the Cybertruck bombing at Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. Did I miss anything?
No, that sums it up. Yeah. I'll give a background on why that's significant so your viewers understand how this came into my inbox.
Perfect. One other thing that I just wanted to say to the audience is, even though we are redacting these names from the episode, you passed that, I believe you passed that email on to the FBI.
Yes.
We're also going to pass it on to our contacts at the FBI. It's very obvious that people know it. So let's go to you, Sam. Tell me how you got the email.
It started off as comments. So when you have a big Instagram account, you're going to miss a lot of messages because people message and it'll go to hidden messages and everything else. You miss a lot of stuff. Well, I kept seeing this comment on recent posts that I put in there, and it was from this burner account that said, hey, check your DMs, check your DMs, check your DMs. So I go in there and try to find it. There's no message from this guy, hadn't come through or whatever. And then he messages again once that message was opened up. And I said, hey, your previous messages haven't come through. What do you want to tell me? And he said, what I'm going to send you, now these are literally his words, what I'm going to send you is going to change the course of humanity. That was his phrase, change the course of humanity. Okay, a little bit dramatic. I get these messages all the time. People have this big story they want to tell. They want to expose their command, whatever. I take everything with a grain of salt until I have evidence and proof. So this guy is insistent. He tells me that he is a 18 Zulu who I've spoken to before, and he really needs to get this stuff to me. And then he talks about you. He says, I need you to get me in contact with Sean Ryan. I'm like, dude, I don't know Sean Ryan. I'm not that big, but he's insistent that I get him diverted to media sources, says go to Fox News, whatever else. And I said, all right, tell me what you got. So I give him my Proton email account, give him my signal number, and he reaches out immediately. And I'm going to read this initial message for you because this doesn't have names or anything else on it, but this was his message on Sunday. He reached out and said, like I said, this last Sunday, he said, sending with a VPN active on Wi-Fi only. Do not message me. I will send out updates via both Signal and email, but trust me, you're going to want to be involved. Well, first of all, no, I didn't want to be involved. Anyways, and then, so I didn't message. I responded back to his original Instagram message, and I said, hey, I got your message on Proton Mail, and he said, cool, delete this. So I deleted it. That's how I ended up getting this message on Tuesday. So the message that this right here, this manifesto, if you want to call it that, came in on Tuesday. And when I started reading this, my initial take was, okay, this is off the deep end. It's bonkers. I can't validate or verify any of the stuff in this manifesto. Mm-hmm. And I told him that in a subsequent email. And I'll read that to you later, my response to him. And once again, my response to him elicited, hey, get me in contact with Sean Ryan, Fox News, and he even said Pete Hegseth. Get me in contact with Hegseth. And I'm like, dude, I don't have the incoming Secretary of Defense's phone number. Sorry, bro. That's the last time I talked to him. So yesterday morning.
What date was that?
That was Tuesday. That was this Tuesday. So we're Friday now. That was 3 days ago.
So
the day before.
30th?
Yeah, the day before the attack. I dismissed this stuff out of hand.
The 31st. It was on the 31st.
Yes. In fact, I posted something on my... I told your producer about this as well. But this was a post I made on Twitter. I was just trying to be humorous, off the cuff. It was... I didn't mean anything about it. I was just being humorous for my audience. I said, my inbox was especially eventful today. Allegations of war crimes, government anti-gravity technology, and fears about being tracked and watched by the feds. It's always, the world is ending and I have this information that needs to get to the media, and never, how you doing, brother? Everything all right? I was just playing off of a meme. Mm-hmm. It was just supposed to be a joke. That was the body of his email that he sent me. And I didn't think anything about it. I didn't know who Matt Berg was, Matt Livelsberg, or anything else. He told me who he was in the email. He pointed me to his LinkedIn account. I didn't know any of this stuff. And I was just kind of being humorous with my audience. Like, I get these crazy messages sometime. And then the day after that message, I wake up and it was like, hey, Sam, nobody in the community seems to know this guy. Do you happen to know who he is? And I played that for you before we came up here. Just absolute shock. That's how I woke up yesterday.
Do you want to play it now?
Yeah. Excuse my language. I was definitely in shock. Let me find this chat. So,
While you're digging through that, you know what we should do? I should get that Instagram account from you to see if they messaged any of our Instagram accounts. And we should also get that email
I don't have
address.
it. I deleted it.
You deleted it?
He told me to delete it, and I deleted it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should also get that email address and see if they sent it in through the website and see if he tried to contact us. Get that to the FBI.
So I'm in a military.
Hopefully they actually do something.
Yeah, I'm in a military group chat. Buddy, Green Beret, Corey, he says, @Sam. No, nobody I've asked in the community knows him. You is at 8:46 a.m. yesterday. So I woke up and I said, OF, I'm shaking. This guy emailed me 2 days ago. I'm not playing. And then he said, damn. And then this was my response to him at 8:48. Like, just woke up.
I'm fucking shaking, bro. You don't understand. This guy emailed me and told me he was being watched by the FBI and Homeland Security, but they weren't going to do anything to him because he had a VBID. I'm not fucking playing, dude. I have the email. I am shaking, man. This is nuts.
And it goes from there. And I sat there for probably an hour talking to my wife. I'm shaking. I can't even think straight. Like, normal day is shot, and I didn't know what I want to do. Do I sit on this? Do I do nothing with it? I've got to tell somebody. I've got to tell the FBI at least, because this is huge. This is all over the news. And then I was like, well, dude, this guy wanted to get in contact with Sean Ryan, so let me get this to Sean Ryan, see if I can get with him. And I had a buddy who knew your producer, and we went from there. But
wow. You want to read the email?
Yep. So this email came in on December 31st at 10:42 a.m. That is Tuesday. He said, in case I do not make it to my decision point or on to the Mexico border, I am sending this now. Please do not release this until 1 January and keep my identity private until then. First off, I am not under duress or hostile influence or control. My first car was a 2006 black Ford Mustang V6 for verification. What we have been seeing with drones, he puts that in quotes, he says drones, is the operational use of gravitic propulsion systems powered aircraft by most recently China and the East Coast, but throughout history, the US. Only we in China have this capability. Our OPCEN, that's Operation Center, our OPCEN location for this activity is in the box below. China has been launching them from the Atlantic from submarines for years, but this activity recently has picked up. As of now, it is just a show of force, and they are using it similar to how they used the balloon for SIGINT and ISR, which are also part of the integrated comms system. There are dozens of those balloons in the air at any given time. The so what is because of the speed and stealth of these unmanned aircraft. They are the most dangerous threat to national security that has ever existed. They basically have an unlimited payload capacity and can park it over the White House if they wanted. It's checkmate. U.S. government needs to give the history of this, how we are employing it and weaponizing it, how China is employing them, and what the way forward is. China is poised to attack anywhere in the East Coast. I've been followed for over a week now from likely Homeland or FBI, and they are looking to move on me and are unlikely going to let me cross into Mexico, but won't because they know I am armed and I have a massive VBID. Let me pause right there for a second. So he says a massive VBID. When I was talking to the FBI yesterday, they didn't know what a VBID was. I had to explain what that acronym meant, literally.
You fucking serious?
Dead serious. I said it twice, and he goes, you said that word VBID. Can you tell me what that is? For your audience, a VBID, for your audience who has not been in the GWOT for the last 20 years, a VBID is a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. In layman's terms, a car bomb, what we saw at Trump Tower. So, backing up, he says, I am armed and have a massive VBID. I've been trying to maintain a very visible profile and have kept my phone, and they are definitely digitally tracking me. Here's where he gets into the other stuff, and this is where we had to redact the names. Well, your producer redacted the names. I have knowledge of this program and also war crimes that were covered up during airstrikes in Nimruz province, Afghanistan in 2019 by the admin, DOD, DEA, and CIA. I conducted targeting for these strikes of over 125 buildings. 65 were struck because of CIVCAS, that's civilian casualties, that killed hundreds of civilians in a single day. U.S. FORA continued strikes after spotting civilians on initial ISR. It was supposed to take 6 minutes and scramble all aircraft in CENTCOM. The UN basically called these war crimes, but the administration made them disappear. I was part of that cover-up with U.S. FORA and Agent Redacted of the DEA. So I don't know if my abduction attempt is related to either. I worked with Redacted IO staff on this as well as the response to Bala Murghab. Redacted commander at the time, Redacted can validate this. You need to elevate this to the media so we avoid a world war because this is a mutually assured destruction situation. Then he says, for vetting, my LinkedIn is Matt Berg or Matthew Livelsberger, an active duty 18 Zulu out of 110, that's 1st Battalion 10th Special Forces Group. My profile is public. I have an active TSSCI with UAP, USAP access.
What is USAP? Do you know what that is?
I don't know what that is. But I checked his credentials on LinkedIn. So that was the first thing I did. I went to his LinkedIn page. First thing I noticed was all of his bona fides were in place. He has all the UAS training from USASOC and everything else. And so I said, okay, at least the guy knows what he's talking about with drones. That was a very rough dig into the guy. But my issue was I couldn't validate or verify any of this information. And I told him that. And how I responded to him was in a subsequent email. I said, this is obviously a very big deal, but I don't have anything to verify this information with. Talking about gravitic propulsion systems without evidence just makes me another UFO talking head. Like, I'm not going to go on my social media page and start talking about UFOs and anti-gravity systems and everything. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't. And he said, can I get on Fox News Contact on Signal as well as Sean's show? Hegseth would be good too. That was his last message to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, the thing is, what is a gravitic propulsion system?
To be honest with you, it is a fancy term you're going to find in science fiction. You won't find it in any, as far as I know, you won't find this in any kind of official manual or, scientific research. This is all science fiction.
To the average person, when you hear the word PSYOP, look out for PSYOP. The drones, we allowed them from November 18th for 6 weeks, and we're not doing anything about it. Hey, look over here, but something's going on over here. How does the average person, want to identify PSYOP or even consider the concept of a PSYOP?
Man, that's a good question. I think the average person just looking at what's going on is, we're always involved in PSYOPs all the time. And when I say PSYOPs, there's a part of the U.S. Army that's special operations, that's PSYOPs. And when we say PSYOPs here, we won't be referring to like this is the U.S. Army. We're talking about just general psychological operations here. But if you're seeing large-scale things happen, the first thing you want to look at is what's the timing of this event and what's the context of what's going on. And then right away, what is the information that's being suppressed and what's being forced out into the public? Like these passports that happened and the ID card that was found in this guy who burned in a Tesla. Like somehow this thing mysteriously
You're talking about Matt Livelsberger, who his Cybertruck exploded in front of the Trump Tower.
Yeah. So like, what is information suppression and availability, and what's the timing of what's going on? Like, is there something else happening? So like, is a political candidate about to transfer power, or is something going on somewhere else that this could be some kind of distraction for? So we just go back to if you learn magic, you get a magic kit when you're a kid, and they teach you like, well, shake your hand over here. Let me just do this thing. It's very basic. I'm just going to do a big thing over here to draw people's attention away. So we tend to think like there's some highly advanced technology going on to harness the power of a PSYOP, but it's usually pretty simple.
So for you, Chase, the average person sees the drones. Oh, it's the drones going on. The average person sees, with the Cybertruck and the whole ID that you're talking about, and then Sean Ryan and his crew talking about that email. When the average person sees it, they look at it at face value. Here's what happened.
Yeah.
How do you view it when you see it?
The first thing I'm looking at is what's the incentive here? Is there somebody that's going to gain from this being public or this being exposed to the public? And if you just look at the last few years, anything that we want to normalize to the public, we start out small. So we start out with these Freedom of Information Act releases like UAPs, drones, UFOs, all this stuff. And then these whistleblowers will come forward and start going on podcasts and start going on. They've been on Joe Rogan. They've been all over the place. So it started like this massive amount of information flux.
We had a couple of those. We had one of the guys on as well. If you're talking about the UFO whistleblowers.
Yeah.
Interesting business model. Keep going.
And who was the guy that you just had on? I watched it on the plane on the way over here. Dr. What was his name?
Stephen Greer?
Stephen Greer.
Okay.
Most believable guy I've ever seen from a body language perspective. Like, he is very believable. There's some guys that I think are less credible. But if you just look at this release of information, when I see the drones as a behavioral expert, I'm seeing this is a logical expansion of that narrative. This is just the next logical step in a normalization process. So we're normalizing these drones, and we're normalizing the aerial phenomenon, and then all of this stuff happening, we don't know what the end goal is. So if you're looking at a PSYOP, the end goal of all PSYOPs is to modify or shape behavior of a crowd of people, a group of people. So what would be the end result, or the desired end result, for somebody to shape a behavior of a country or a populace? So we want to normalize it, but then you got to go into, and I'm not going to speculate on this, but the next step is why? Why would this need to be normalized? What would the next step after that be?
So you got one incentive. Who benefits from this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were going somewhere. So the business format is, here's aliens, crisis, scare everybody. Hey, potentially we need, because of this, and then you bring those. So you're saying the level of advancement of the way they would do it is, boom, claim this guy's a whistleblower, that he's going up against the government, where in reality he's actually representing them, trick the populace to believe in that he is on your side, and be careful with this. And the whistleblower increases confidence and saying, yeah, don't trust the government when it comes down to this, but this is what's really going on, which in reality, that's exactly what the government wants to relate to you, and then trick the populace into distracting them from what the really is going to be. Is that kind of what you're saying? That's the business model?
Definitely possible. And I'm not casting aspersions on anybody, but I'm always suspicious if someone's coming out as a whistleblower when they have a list of what I'm allowed to talk about and what I'm not. And when a whistleblower comes out with, I can't talk about that, I'm limited to speak on that, then they have a list of speaking points. And that makes me a little suspicious.
Let me pull the pieces together for you guys. We got Hal Puthoff writing about 0 Point Energy. This guy's connected to spook stuff, connected to the government, connected to the Black Projects. We got his partner, Ken Shoulders, talking about plasmoids can make stuff disappear. Together, their condensed charge plasma stuff got given like some of the highest priority by the Pentagon for research. Hal Puthoff also has a patent. Hal Puthoff's patent is a quantum communication patent that can go through plasma. No, I'm not making this up. Let me repeat that. Hal Puthoff, he only has like one patent that's been approved 5 different times. And it's all about being a quantum communication patent with no electric and magnetic fields, aka scalar potential, like Tom Bearden was saying. And it goes through salt water and plasma. So if you need a device, an ability to communicate through a ball of plasma, Hal Puthoff happens to have the patent that you would need. So I feel like I'm not pushing the boundaries here, just connecting a couple dots. The Navy and Salvatore Pais have all the patents that you need to make a plasma ball. Ken Shoulders and Hal Puthoff in the early 90s were building plasma balls that you can pull energy out of them, and communication devices where you can communicate with the ball of plasma. In the 60s, we were making hypersonic planes that were using plasma sheaths that were pulling the planes along faster than should be physically possible. So it seems like we've turned these plasma sheath, into a ball or a drone of plasma that we can fly around. So that is the theory that fits with the MH370 videos being real It fits with all the historical evidence about this type of technology. It fits with what these engineers and defense contractors have been saying on videos for decades now. Decades. A lot of the videos I showed you go back 20, 30 years or more. And the key part is this. There isn't another answer. What is causing the UFOs to float? It's 0 point energy. It's 0 point energy. There's nothing inside of the UFO, because any more mass you add to the UFO for fuel slows you down. So you quickly run into a problem where you need an outside fuel source. The 0 point energy is the answer. 0 point energy is the outside fuel source. And there isn't another thing. There's no other options. Like, it's just 0 point energy. When you start to dig into it and you go into physics, it's not like there's like 20 different options that it can be. You just find out that 0 point energy was always the answer, and that cold fusion is just a tap. It's a tap, an efficient tap into the 0 point energy field, where you're pulling the energy out much more efficiently than spinning a copper coil through a magnetic wire, which is what we do right now. That's easy. So this is the reason why people are listening to me. I just want people to know, whether or not you believe me or not, that I'm not doing any of this for money or fame or glory or what have you. But obviously, I've been doing this for over a year now, and I'm absolutely not trying to use this case as some type of opportunity to make a name for myself or make money. No. The only reason why I do push memorabilia related to the case is because I don't want anybody to forget about this. I don't want anybody to forget about the plane. I don't want anybody to forget about what we did to the plane, because I do realize that it's the type of thing that it seems impossible. It seems impossible. It seemed impossible to me as well. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized that it is real, but it's so outlandish, so beyond the paradigm, that you're never going to be able to convince everybody. You might not even be able to convince half the people on this planet. That's just the hard truth. It's just so impossible to accept. So we need to fight on a different level. We can't fight fair. We have no chance of winning this battle of disclosure fighting fair. We have to be able to do what the American revolutionaries did and win at any and all costs, whatever is required. If that means trolling people, burning bridges with people, then so be it. If that means using memes as a method of propaganda to get the information out there, so be it. The adversary will stop at nothing to prevent this information from getting out. Talking about the orbs, this is probably going to be the next domino to fall. This is why it's important, is that what the orbs are doing to the temperature of the atmosphere when they're cooling it with their line going in front of the orbs, that will be confirmed either by some of these woke disclosure UFO people or through some other video that will leak or get shown on to the public. We're going to find that the physics on display in the videos, which I'll show you another clip, because it's hard to see unless you look at a color changed version. This physics will be the next thing that gets confirmed. Just look closely at those orbs. Look closely at the dark line in front of them. That's a cold event, not hot, cold. There's going to be something that's going to confirm this, and then people can come running back to MH370 videos and Ashton Forbes, because we're going to find out they're using some form of propulsion that is endothermic propulsion. Basically, they're creating a little black hole in front of them in real time. And this is what I've been saying all along, which is why people freak out, is that, like, I know these videos are real. And as hopefully I've convinced you guys my thought process for understanding the videos are real. And I understand why the people are hiding the videos. I get all of that as well. I understand what's at stake here and all of that. But we're going to find that all the stuff that gets revealed that's truthful information about this UFO phenomenon, we're going to find that it all supports those videos. We're going to find this triangle formation has a purpose. We're going to find that the dark line, the cold lines in front of the orbs has a purpose, the 0 point energy stuff. We're going to find this all true.